Good morning and welcome once again. Excuse me, I'll start again. Good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and this is my live webcast, which goes out on Wednesdays and Sundays. It's Wednesday, the 1st of September. This is show number 168. So what have we got for you in today's edition? Well, bike crashes made for depressing bank holiday headlines on Monday. Self-driving bus hit a visually impaired Paralympic athlete in Tokyo. Another Tesla has crashed into a stationary police vehicle in the USA. APC sold police bike boots on eBay. The Shad tank bag mounting system, something I came across while I was looking at luggage the other day. We'll have a quick look at that, and I'll introduce you to another bike brand you've probably never heard of. I certainly hadn't. They're called Zanella, and they're from Argentina. And we'll finish off with the talking point for the day, which is I'll be asking a question about whether we can recalibrate bike training to address the kind of issues that cropped up in the crashes. Don't forget, if you can't grab it live here today, you can always get it on catch up later. Clive has looked in. Good morning, Clive. Nice to see you here. Okay, before I go any further, of course, one reminder, if you haven't already booked up for it, you've just about got time to get a ticket ordered for the Cornering with Confidence live online webcast, which I'll be doing later today, 8 o'clock this evening, in fact. It basically talks about the survival skills reference point system for cornering. So it's an ideal way to find out how I teach cornering to my trainees if you're too far away from me to actually book a course in person. So that's £5 for a ticket. That is about 45 minutes of your time for the talk this evening at 8 o'clock. That's Wednesday, the 1st of September. If you're watching this on catch up, you may well have already missed it. Right, okay, so on with the news stories. And well, it's rather depressing, I have to say, when I open my news feed every morning, and this is the sort of thing that I see in the biking press. Let's sort of try and zoom in on that a little bit. This is what was actually in my news feed first thing on Monday, and these are the 5 top stories actually in the news feed. So the first one there, rider killed in North Yorkshire. The second one, motorcyclist seriously injured in a crash with a tractor and trailer near Hull. The third one, M90 closed as a car and a bike were involved in the collision up in Scotland there. Motorcyclist fighting for life after a collision with a van on the military road in Northumberland, and witnesses being sought for a motorbike and car collision in Petersfield, leaving the rider with serious injuries. So, you know, it's all depressing stuff to read that every time I kind of open my news feed every morning. Now, you know, it's a bank holiday, lots of vehicles on the road, probably more than usual this year due to lockdown restrictions on holidays abroad. And even on a murky, chilly sort of weekend like the one just gone, there will have been lots of traffic out there. But the sad truth is that it's the same old story virtually every day of the week. I know I've said this before, but what's really frustrating is it's the same accidents. Smidsies at junctions, crashes on corners, overtakes that go wrong, and just plain riding too close and too fast when other vehicles are around. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. But if you watch the video nasty on my Facebook page on Monday, you'll see what I mean. Far too many riders point the finger at bad luck or not knowing the road or some other excuse, when really they should be pointing their finger at poor skills and rubbish decisions. Yeah, sorry to be harsh first thing on the show, but you know, I think it needs to be said, and it needs to be said fairly regularly. Right, okay, so on with the news items. Toyota have suspended their driverless bus service at the Paralympics, at least for the time being, after one hit a visually impaired athlete at the Paralympics park. Aramitsu Kitazono, a Japanese athlete, he was left unable to compete after suffering cuts and bruises after being hit by what's called an e-pallet vehicle. in the Olympic Village. The bus apparently pulled away from a T junction, drove through a pedestrian crossing while Kitazono was actually on the crossing himself. He didn't see the bus, and the bus appears not to have seen him. His injuries prompted a personal statement from the president of Toyota, who's Akio Toyoda. And he said, "We're very sorry that the accident has made many people worried. The vehicle is stronger than a person, so I was obviously worried about how they were. It shows that autonomous vehicles are not yet realistic for normal roads," which is quite a statement when you think about what's been going on around the world in terms of introducing these into at least test format. Toyota had been showcasing their autonomous vehicles with a round-the-clock shuttle service. Toyota visited the site and reviewed video footage of the incident, and he admitted there had been overconfidence in the autonomous driving technology. And not surprisingly, Toyota plan to conduct a thorough investigation into the accident. Now, that's sort of rather in contrast to the no comment approach that Tesla continue to take, because over in Florida, in Orlando, a Tesla Model 3 has hit a stationary police car and a Mercedes SUV, which was also stopped at the same time in a 5 a.m. crash. If I can get the picture up, I will show you the impact damage. Here we go. Let's get that in. Oops, I'll just get it back again. I'll just press the wrong button. There we are. That's the impact damage to the Tesla. So as you can see, it appears to have swerved at the last moment, but so it's clearly not a light impact. The rear wheel of the police car was also torn off in another photo. According to a statement from the Florida Highway Patrol, a trooper had stopped to assist the driver of a disabled Mercedes at the side of Interstate 4. The trooper had already got out of his parked vehicle when the Tesla ran into it. The Tesla driver told officers that at the time of the collision, she was using the car's automatic pilot feature. The crash comes amidst increased scrutiny of Tesla's driver assistance systems and the way that Tesla markets them. Tesla includes autopilot as a standard offering in all its newer vehicle. Now, Tesla insists that autopilot does not make their vehicles autonomous and that it requires a driver to remain attentive behind the wheel at all times. The problem is attentive. What does that actually mean? Hands on the wheel isn't really enough. You need to be virtually driving the car, even if you're not actually moving anything. So anyway, Tesla didn't respond to a request for a comment on that story. So yes, Clive has just said uncomfortable but sadly true in reference to my comments about bike crashes over the new year. Okay, don't forget, if you want to add a comment or a question, drop me a line in the comment stream here and I'll get back to you if I can during the show. If I can't, at the end of the show. If you've got any feedback on the show, I'm always welcoming that. Always good to hear what you guys out there think. And if you'd like me to cover anything for a future show, again, just ask away. I do keep reminding people. I very rarely get any suggestions, so obviously happy with what I'm covering. That's the calls anyway. So yeah, let me know what you think. Now, in the next story, a Bradford police officer is facing a misconduct hearing after he was accused of stealing police motorcycle riding kit between 2018 and 2019 and selling it on eBay. PC David Hitchcocks, he worked in the off-road motorbike team based at Eccleshill, and he is alleged to have been caught on CCTV. In one incident, he was seen entering the station on July the 2nd, 2019. He arrived empty-handed but left with a large carrier bag. Sometime after that, a colleague discovered his motorcycle boots had disappeared from the locker room. And on July the 13th, just 10 days or so later, the boots matching the description of the missing pair were found for sale on eBay on an account linked to PC Hitchcocks. It seems that the police waited to see what would happen, and the boots were duly sold 4 days later to a member of the public for £170. And when the account was actually investigated, 4 items of motorcycle clothing and a second pair of boots were found to have been sold between January and October 2018, and they'd all been issued to police riders. PC Hitchcock is alleged to have removed from store clothing and boots that he was wearing at the time that he had a crash, and items matching their description were also found on eBay. So he's accused of taking police property on 2 occasions and selling it without the consent or knowledge of West Yorkshire Police. Right, so don't forget, set a reminder if you want to catch this show on a regular basis. It goes out on Wednesdays and Sundays at 11 a.m. It's nearly always live. Very occasionally, I have to do a recorded show just to keep something going out for you. You can catch up with it here on Facebook after the event, or you can go over to YouTube and you can watch it there, where it's in one of my playlists. So do make a note and hopefully head back for the next show on Sunday. Now, I was looking online over the last few days for some luggage and for the bike. Now, slightly frustratingly, I actually ordered some and then got an email a couple of days later to say out of stock. And I kind of get a bit frustrated when you actually put an order in and then you get a message saying we haven't got any. Now, to be fair to the company involved, they did do a very prompt refund once they had admitted that they hadn't got what I was looking for. But what I came across whilst I was looking for all this was a tank bag mounting system. Now, this is the Shad Pin Lock pin system for tank bags. Let me just again get the picture up for you. There it goes. So again, if you have a quick look at that, what you'll see is there's the filler cap, and some of the screws are replaced with those little pins. Now, what are we told by Shad? Well, we're told that the system is light, undoubtedly is. It's elegant. Well, it's certainly a clever idea, and it's functional. Well, I would hope it probably keeps your tank bag on the bike when you need it to. And they're compatible with over 180 motorcycles. Well, as most motorcycles now use this kind of filler cap design, it shouldn't be too difficult to replace some of the screws. But one of the things they say is that the mounting system is thin and light, and it's inside the tank bag instead of on the bike, so as not to affect the look of the bike. So how do you have a mounting system that is on the bike and not or on the bag and not on the bike? Well, it turns out that actually you don't. There is, of course, a bit of mounting on both the tank and the bag, and what you actually get on the bottom of the compatible bags is this kind of solid base, which isn't a bad idea actually on a tank bag, but the mounting plate which goes in there, you can see it sort of bolts in, is movable forwards and backwards. So basically you can adjust the position of your tank bag back and forth, which is actually pretty useful actually, because it means you can get your optimum riding position on your own bike and put the tank bag in a place where it's not going to interfere too much with the sort of steering and the switch gear. But the bad news is, of course, that there are 2 parts to every story here, and you do need a fitting on the tank itself that secures to the mounting plate. Now, it's worth knowing that in a crash, we tend to slide forwards and upwards over the tank when we hit something in front of us. And so it's not entirely surprising that groin and pelvic injuries amongst motorcyclists are actually surprisingly common. And the higher the tank rises in front of you, bad news if you ride an adventure style bike, unfortunately, the style of tank that feels nice and sat on rather than perched on top of, the more likely these injuries are. So anything that can be done to smooth out the top of the tank, the better. So what fell very much out of use was this kind of filler cap. Now, that is actually one that is on a 400 Honda, and you can see that there's a sort of fairly sizable chunk of metal protruding from the top of the tank itself, and then there's the bolt-on filler cap and the lock bracket also attached to the top of the tank. Now that 404, I owned those in the late 70s and in early 80s, and it was a fairly standard sort of fitting for petrol tanks for many years. But what's happened over the sort of the intervening 40 odd plus years of motorcycle design is that the filler cap has been smoothed into the petrol tank. So you no longer get this kind of protruding filler cap. Have a look at the top of your own tank and have a look at it, and what you're more than likely going to have is something like that with a flush fit filler which hinges up. But unfortunately, there's the mounting system, and look what it does. It might make for a nice secure tank bag, but I have to say I'm really not very keen on the idea of using a flush fitting mounting system to insert into the ring of spikes on that you've just bolted into the top of your petrol tank. Ouch. So personally, I'll be continuing to use my magnetic tank bag. Now, one problem that often happens with magnetic tank bags is they don't actually sit very securely, so you do need powerful magnets, and of course you need a steel tank. No use whatsoever if you've got a plastic tank. And the other thing that can happen if you are not cautious is that air can get under the front of the tank bag and actually lift it off. And I've a couple of times I've had problems with that in the dim distant past. So for many years, what I've used is a very, very simple system to secure the bag. There's normally a handle or a loop of some sort at the front of the bag. And all I've done is put a carabiner on that, and the carabiner simply clips to a key loop which is attached to my ignition key. So as soon as the ignition is actually switched on, the key can't pull out, and the carabiner and loop restrain the bag from lifting at the front. And once you've got the front secure, the back of the tank bag actually stays pretty much put where you left it. It really doesn't move around very much. So these kind of systems are clever. They're very innovative. They look very cool. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure you really need to spend cash on something like this. And if you value your nether regions, I would probably stay clear of something like this. All right, okay. Don't forget, if you do enjoy the show, you can head over to my coffee page, where you can not only buy me a coffee, but you can also access hundreds of riding articles, better biking articles, help you avoid having the kind of spills I was talking about earlier on in the show. And there are something, I think over 500 of them over there at the moment. And there's more content as well if you become a supporter. £3 is the cost of a coffee over there. Martin Foster has looked in and he says, nice to see you again. Quarantine for me, now free again. Oh, post-quarantine, now free again, wandering Mongolia. Fantastic to find somebody looking in from Mongolia, Martin. I think you're probably the first ever to appear from that particular location. Yeah, very, very good. Excellent. Send us some photos or something and I'll try and feature them on the later show. Great to see you. Thanks very much. Well, from Mongolia to Argentina, a few shows ago I brought you the Moto Victory, which I said was a South American brand I'd never heard of. So this week it's another brand you'd probably never heard of, because I certainly hadn't. They're called Zanella, and they are the brand leader in motorcycle production and sales in South America. Their publicity says they're established 70 years ago, said to be an icon of Argentine industry. They employ almost 1,000 people. They sell just over 100,000 motorcycles a year, so they are pretty big. They vie for top-selling brand with Honda. They swap places, but very few of their motorcycles are actually sold outside Argentina. So founded in 1948, the company began producing motorcycles in the 1960s, and interestingly they were the Italian Ciccato brand. Again, another brand I'm not really very familiar with at all, but they built their 100 and 125cc machines under license. And incidentally, the engines on those particular bikes were actually designed by the legendary Ducati engineer Fabio Taglioni. Currently, Zanetti have a range of mopeds, motorbikes, bikes, quads, karts, and even four-stroke engines, which range from 50 to 500cc. But only the mopeds are fully manufactured in Argentina. The other machines are assembled, usually as knocked down kits. And whilst I was flicking through their model range, this is one of the bikes that I actually found. So let's just show you that. It's a rather handsome little machine, I think. It's a 250 Zanella Staccato. It's a 249 single overhead cam V twin, as you can see. And if you look closely, you'll see that the motor in the bike looks very, very similar to the old Virago 250 engine. So I suspect it is in fact the Yamaha motor. It's said to produce 18 horsepower, and the publicity material claims that gives it a top speed of 90 miles per hour, which is one of those off a cliff down, and only you're never going to get 90 from 18 horsepower, even with a sort of full race fairing, certainly not with a sort of a city up kind of motorcycle like that. So my own guess is that 75 would probably be more likely. Now, the Virago motor actually appeared in a sort of tuned form for Yamaha in a sporty roadster, which was called the SRV 250. I don't think it ever appeared here in the UK. I've never even seen one as an import. That did put out 27 horsepower, and that would push the bike towards 90 miles per hour. So I suspect the Staccato V250i here, it borrows a lot more from the Virago end of the tuning rather than the that SRV 250. The Virago came with a 5-speed gearbox, and it had an output of around 21 horsepower. I rode one years and years and years ago, and I actually quite liked it. It was a surprisingly pokey little machine once you were accelerating from low speed, but it did run out of puff over 70-ish. One thing that's slightly odd about the Staccato here is, although it's got a front tyre which is a fairly standard 180/17, the rear's a 130/19 by 15, a bit of a balloon tyre there. One big plus, though, and something that other bikes could benefit from, is that the exhausts are actually stainless. I think it's highly unlikely that you'll ever see one here in the UK, but I suspect it would make quite a nice little town bike. Right, okay, so I started off the show by talking about the bank holiday toll of crashes, and the fact that many riders are keen to blame bad luck. So is it just a UK problem? Well, as it happens, I was out on yesterday morning meeting a chap called Mario Macmillan, who's a journalist from New Zealand. He happened to be over here visiting family, and he dropped me a line. Mario interviewed me for his magazine in 2019, and the story ran in the magazine just in time for me when I arrived for the Shiny Side Up bike safety events over there. Yeah, Mario gave me a bell, and we got together yesterday morning. Sorry for keeping you waiting. The joys of crashes on the M40. So we got talking about bike crashes, and one of the things that you find once you actually start looking at what happens in other countries is that even if you move to the opposite side of the globe and you move to a country which is actually just coming out of its winter biking season towards their summer and their peak biking season, they have very, very similar concerns. There are articles in the press as we speak that say that New Zealand seems to be on track for a record year of motorcycle deaths. And one of the reasons for that is pointed at the boom in sales last year. The Motorcycle Industry Association figures actually show that there was a spike in sales associated with the New Zealand strict lockdown, and it was the highest sales level for 10 years. So in 2019, 56 motorcyclists were killed on New Zealand roads, and they say that's the highest death toll since 1997. And currently, this was in August, there had already been 31 deaths. So they still have the summer, the early part of the summer to come. So they are worried that they will beat that record. Now, Dave Kilty, the ACC's injury prevention team manager, who I worked with on the Shiny Side Up events in New Zealand, explained that COVID has led to the purchase of new motorcycles. People aren't travelling as much, so what better way to see the countryside and to isolate than to get on a motorcycle? Obviously, when he says travelling, he means to foreign climes. Tony Knight from the New Zealand branch of the Institute of Advanced Motorcyclists, he says there is no magic bullet. But what have they done out there? Well, the government has spent more than 6 million NZ dollars on motorcycle safety. They have put money into improvements on roads in high-risk areas. They have done a lot of advertising about bike safety. They've run the training program, the Ride Forever scheme, which is a highly, highly subsidized opportunity to get out and get some training. Both for new riders and experienced riders, something I would love to see over here. It really is a bargain, quite frankly, in terms of how much it costs. If you go and look at the Ride Forever site over in New Zealand, you'll find out, and you live in England, you'll be really shocked. Tony says, however, that road safety improvements are valuable, but the most important safety device on a motorcycle is the rider. I can't disagree with that. Get some training and improve the quality of your riding. But, and this is the point that I've been trying to make in Ride Forever, myself in the Shiny Side Up talks, and also here at home in what I do, online, and also what I do on road. I think it's a very specific kind of training that's needed. That's why I teach survival skills. Now, ultimately, the roads are always going to be places where there are going to be crashes. The road system, a system in the sort of in the more explicit term of an interaction of different parts, it simply wasn't designed to prevent conflicts. No one in their right mind would ever design a road system nowadays which left vehicles that weigh a couple of tons traveling towards each other at 60 miles per hour in opposite directions, separated by white paint. It simply would not happen if we had to design the roads from scratch. So what we have now, I doubt it'll ever be crash proof, and I doubt that even advanced vehicle detection systems will be able to prevent every crash. But get this, the point is we do know where most riders are killed. And again, the statistics don't vary massively between the UK and New Zealand, or Australia, or the USA, or Canada, or anywhere else where I've been able to get crash stats. We know that although many collisions happen in urban areas, most of those are actually low speed, and whilst there may be injuries involved, they're rarely fatal. The fatal crashes happen out of town, usually on left-hand bends when the rider runs wide and into oncoming traffic, and not where the car comes the other way and runs wide into the biker, as many riders believe. It happens at blind junctions out on open roads, which many riders never see until it's far too late. And the other high-risk activity is crashing, is overtaking, which leads to a lot of collisions when either vehicles turn right, vehicles pull out of side turnings that the rider didn't see when committing themselves to the overtake, or running into something coming the other way because they overtook too close to a dead zone, visual dead zone, of either a bend or a blind crest. So we need to work on our awareness of where things go wrong if we're to have a chance of understanding what we're going to do about it. We also need to understand that which riders are at risk. Now, we know the risk factors of riding. Riding when unqualified, riding when disqualified, riding under the influence of drink or drugs, speeding in urban areas. I've talked about all that before. And the odds are also significantly skewed against you if you're inexperienced, not just young, incidentally, but new to biking. There is a learning period, however old you are, and it takes some time for a rider to sort of work through that and get a level of experience. It's not just young riders who are at risk of being inexperienced. Even if you are inexperienced, another significant risk factor is an unfamiliar bike, whether you're on a test ride or whether you've just swapped bikes with a mate or whether you have bought a new machine. Now, it's hard to tell a young rider they're at risk. I'm sure all of us pretty much went through the sort of teens and early 20s period when we were invulnerable, weren't we? Or if we did fall off, we bounced. But for older, more experienced riders, we really should be able to avoid many of the risk factors. Simple stuff like not having just one beer with lunch. I always worry when I go on a group ride and I see somebody chugging a beer back because, oh, it's just one, it won't matter. It does. It really does matter. Not slipping over the speed limit by a few miles per hour in town. It's another easy choice, keeping the speed under control. Not ragging a test bike or new machine senseless to see what it will do is another simple choice. But whilst the riders making those kind of decisions are the ones I've just mentioned are at high risk, they actually make up relatively few of the bike crashes. Most killed and seriously injured stats. The crash itself, when you look at it, turns out to involve everyday riders doing everyday things. It's the sensible riders very often who crash, the ones that we think, well, they'll never crash, and when they do, we think, well, I wonder what on earth happened to them. And they often, these crashes, the fatal crashes, involve more experienced riders on bigger machines too, machines that they're used to. So, it's easy to say riders should be better prepared, but what's worrying is that as I said before, conventional training, more and more training to higher and higher and higher standards doesn't seem to deliver the benefits that are usually proposed for that. One of the problems is that we don't seem to deliver training that makes riders more aware of their vulnerabilities and leaves them asking more questions about their environment. We tend to deliver training that makes people confident and think they know the answers. And I can point you here at the IAM's own survey of riders, which was on the Road Safety GB webinar series back in the spring. They found that after passing the test, riders tended to be more confident to ride more quickly, and worryingly, they turned out to be more likely to blame others when things did go wrong on the road. So my take on this is that we have to recalibrate how we think about riding, whether that's at new rider level for Mr. Average Biker or after post-test training. We have to accept that crashes are a rider issue. They're not the fault of the roads, they're not the fault of other road users, and they are certainly not bad luck. So we need to know where the problem areas are, and then we can be proactive and risk averse in our approach to riding, whether that's approaching junctions, corners, overtakes, or following other vehicles. If we know what the threats are posed, then we can work out a coping strategy. We can be ready to deal with the worst case scenario. And if we know where those worst case threats are, then we know how to respond to, and we can work on honing our collision avoidance and evasion techniques. And we need more than anything to keep learning, and whether that's some experience that we simply gain out on the road ourselves, or whether it's with a riding coach on road or on track, or whether it's simply by doing things like watching videos like my 60-second safety series or my live webcasts, or just doing it the old-fashioned way, reading. The fact is, it doesn't take a lot of work to significantly lower the risks that we face out on the roads and lower them in our favour. And the final point there really is that we need to remember that skills are like cash. Now, if we've got cash coming in, we can do two things with it. We can bank it for a rainy day, or we can spend it. But there's a compromise strategy. We can spend a bit and save a bit, and that way we still keep something in the bank for emergencies, but still get to enjoy what we've learned. But if we only ever accumulate skills in order to spend them, then when that rainy day comes along, we will have no reserves to cope. And it doesn't matter whether you learn on a trek or on the road, whether it's simply you've got used to a bike and you're now picking up experience on that, or whether your mate told you something would be a good idea because it helped you ride faster. we really need to think about whether blowing our skills all at once is such a great idea. Right, okay, that is it for another show. Throughout September, I'm still running riding assessments in the evening, so long as we can get them finished by dusk. So if you do want your riding checked over objectively, give me a bell. The next online presentation is this evening. It's called Cornering with Confidence. It's live at 8 o'clock tonight, Wednesday, the 1st of September. Tickets still available. Do pop over if you want to find out more about my own coping strategy for corners. I will just put the I'll try and get the link up for you in a moment. So that is, as I say, 8 o'clock tonight. The next one is the next first Wednesday, which will be October the 6th, and that one will be Science of Being Seen again. I intend to run that one probably every 2 weeks for the moment. Okay, training's available as well, of course, and hoping that the weather stays reasonably fine for the next few days. So a few comments here. Duncan has tuned in, talking about the work he's doing on Drive Safe. I shall have a look there, Duncan. You're one of the Ride Forever presenters. So yes, there's Duncan's URL if you want to go and have a look at, or it's his email address if you want to find out and you're in New Zealand about what Ride Forever do. Paul's looked in and said horribly late, we'll catch up later. Work intervened. Terrible stuff, work, isn't it? Clive has said he's looking forward to tonight's presentation. And Duncan also says working on self-analysis before, during, and after the ride and consistent situational awareness are key coaching points. I would certainly agree with that, Duncan. Right, so thank you all for tuning in. Enjoy the show if you're coming along tonight at 8 o'clock. I look forward to seeing you there. And if you aren't going to make it over there, then hopefully see you on Sunday, isn't it? Because it's Wednesday. There I am, forgetting what the day of the week is. So ride safe out there, and I'll be back with another show in just a few days. So it's Kevin Williams from Survival Skills and Elevenses signing off. See you again soon.